Hello and welcome everyone, my name is Nicholas and this is Literally Graphic. And today we are doing another re-review plus one, an overview of the entire 2-volume series of the Flintstones from DC, written by Mark Russell, art by Steve Pugh, colors by Chris Chukri, and letters by Dave Sharp. And while this is certainly an, quote, adult take on the Flintstones, this is largely accomplished without including swearing, nudity, and or killing. Well, as usual, killing remains the most prominent thing, but even if I think killing is more offensive than nudity, it is pulled off in a way that is rather minimal and will likely not bother anyone. Part of the Hanna-Barbera universe, these Flintstones volumes were published in 2016 alongside Future Quest, Scooby Apocalypse, and the Jetsons. Reviewing all the creator peoples, according to his Wikipedia page in 2015, Russell made his debut in comics with his critically acclaimed reboot of the 1973-74 comic PREZ, which I did review but apparently never did a video on. Following PREZ, Russell was hired to write the Flintstones comic book series for DC Comics, which was nominated for 2 Eisner Awards, including Best Limited Series and Best Humor Publication, as well as being nominated for the Harvey Award for Book of the Year. He then went on to also write the Hanna-Barbera-based comic Exit Stage Left, the Snagglepuss Chronicles, which also was nominated and won several awards, The Wonder Twins, and Second Coming. And according to his blogger template website, Steve Pugh draws for DC Comics, Marvel, Dark Horse in 2000 AD, and is currently writing and painting Hotwire Detective Exorcist for Radical Publishing. Other stuff you may have seen include Animal Man with Jamie Delano, The Saint of Killers miniseries with Garth Ennis, and Generation X with Warren Ellis and Brian Wood. Similarly, Chris Chukri also seems to be still using Blogger for his portfolio website, but his bio section is short and sweet, describing himself as a comic book colorist and illustrator. Dave Sharps also keeps things pretty simple on Twitter, describing himself as follows: letters and designs for DC and Valiant Comics, bass player for Dead Cowboys, I kick ass for the Lord. Diving back into the book itself, in many ways the plot of the Flintstones follows the life of what might be considered a tentatively upwardly mobile working class family, although that is one of the items examined in this book. Are they climbing up or digging themselves into a hole? The darkest part of the comic is how we get a look inside the heads of each of the Flintstones' quote appliances, who are like the cartoon animals themselves. We also get flashbacks to both Fred and Wilma's life pre-Bedrock, and even Fred and Birdie's time in a colonizing army that stole the area that would become Bedrock violently from the Tree People. Bedrock is also visited by aliens, many of them on spring break, and Fred's boss tries to lure some Neanderthals into working the pit because they have no concept of money. We also follow the local temple's trial and error journey to inventing the perfect deity. As satire, there is very little in this short series that is factually true, but that's not the point. That said, it being a satire does limit its audience a bit and does perhaps pump up the egos of people who agree with it? Basically, it's creative comfort food, because while I do think I am biased towards it because I agree with it, I do think that as objectively as I can, the writing is pretty good and integrates its ideas into the plot line in a fairly unpreachy manner. That said, there's 2 gay men, and homophobes are going to call that preachy no matter what. No. The art in the series does a pretty excellent job of bridging the original and this new, purely satirical commentary on modern society thing. The characters certainly resemble their original counterparts, but with the addition of tasteful levels of detail and a reduction of color saturation. The framing is pretty basic, but I assume they were trying to appeal to the widest audience and general curiosity. Gender and sexuality are probably the weakest points in this duology, not because they are actively sexist, but just the whole male-identified author who lives with his wife focuses mostly on the same person that the original cartoon also focused on. And the one mention of homosexuality, in favor, is part of a subplot about the absurdity of modern marriage. We do get into Wilma's head a bit and learn more about her origin story, and Pebbles is precocious. But we get almost 0 Betty, and in outlining this review, it felt pretty neutral level representation. Race is also not very well represented. For me, I guess it was a bit compensated by the fact that it did dig into colonization in a way that you don't generally see in DC Comics, But seriously, why is the default to just have what most people will perceive to be white cartoon characters, even across the background? As far as the disability representation, I once again must say not really, but with a caveat, this time because mental health does weave in and out of quite a few of the subplots, not only in the quiet despair of the vacuum cleaner and bowling ball, but also via Fred's PTSD from his time in the army. To summarize, not super radical, but headed in a direction that was entertaining and might be a nice pick-me-up. Bye y'all, keep reading, and resist white supremacy. And as always, Literally Graphic is recorded on the traditional territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation and Anishinaabe people, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Huron-Wendat Nation. I live here because of British colonization, Indigenous genocide, and more geographically specific, Treaty 13. Also known as the Toronto Purchase, which was finalized in 1805 between representatives of the Crown and certain Mississauga peoples. This treaty was a lie and has since been broken many times over. Saying so reflects only my own small steps towards knowing the truth and does nothing for reconciliation.